So now it's time to do some routing. You can see I've got my little setup here. So I have a plank or a sheet of MDF, one straight edge here, and I've lined that up with my abutment line. I'm doing my abutment line first. So I've lined up that edge up with my line, and this is actually a wide piece of MDF. You probably can't see the rest of it, but it's kind of wide, so I can clamp it. You can probably see a couple of clamps here, but I've got 3 clamps on, clamped this MDF to the main body, and I've got a trimmer, a Bosch Colt, or well, it's the Japanese equivalent, but I've got a guide bearing bit in here. This is about 1 inch long, and the diameter is about 8mm, so I won't be able to go all the way down through the mouth because this here is not wide enough to accommodate the bit. So I'll only be going halfway, but I've set the depth, so I don't want to cut all of this in one go. So I'll take sort of maybe about half of this in one pass, remove this MDF, and then use the kind of ledge I cut to guide on the bearing. So I'm going to put my ear protection on, and we'll get to work. You probably can't see very well, but well. Now we've excavated one half here. This is the kind of cavity for the blade and the wedge to sit in. And before we proceed any further, we want to take your other half and clamp the two together as they would be when you glue them. And I don't know if you can see, but I actually made some registration marks on the sole piece here, so that I can put these together when I glue them up, the same as when I actually do the marking here. So I've clamped them up, well I did clamp them up, and in the final gluing position, and then I traced that cavity onto my other half. This lets us, well, mark this piece out, because the next thing we'll be doing is to kind of carve or chop this front throat area out. So obviously if you remove this piece, you won't have this reference edge anymore, so you can't use that to mark onto the other half, and you need that edge because that denotes your abutment angle. So before you go any further, make sure you mark onto your other half. Marking in this way guarantees it kind of increases your chances that you'll be getting a matching pair of the two halves. So you'll have less cleanup work to do when you've finished gluing them up. Once you've finished marking onto your other half, you can either, kind of start on this half and route and clean that up. But I'm going to leave that for later, and I'll finish this first half off. And the next thing we need to do on this half is to, as I said, kind of route or remove this front throat area here. So I'll give you a close-up and we'll do that. Okay, so now we're going to excavate this kind of main throat area here, from this line here all the way up to here and down to the depth of the abutment. That's the one 1/4 inch in from the kind of this mouth piece here, so that deep. And what I've done is well, first I'm going to drill a series of holes down here so that I can chop most of this waste out with a chisel. Obviously, well, it's kind of hard to get a saw down here, so I'm going to drill a line here and then chop. I'll then go in and clean with a router like I did here. But you can use any kind of method you want. You could probably route all this out as well, but I've decided to drill. So I've set my depth for my drill to go to that kind of depth we want to go to on our side here, and basically I'm just going to start drilling. Series of holes drilled here, but obviously because it's a standard drill and not a Forstner, I can't get right up to the kind of edges, so there's going to be some kind of webbing left, and I've just taken a little craft saw and kind of taking the webbing away. This shouldn't take too much work. Obviously when you're doing this, be careful you don't kind of take the saw and ram it into the bed, because it's just going to leave an ugly mark. That's why I've got my finger here to kind of act as a sort of stop. That should just do it. This is a pull saw, so it cuts on a pull stroke, which is obviously a bit safer than if you have a push saw. So if you can find one, you know, a little pull saw would be nice. So I've got this cleaned up now, and I'm just going to do some chopping. So I've got this on the edge, and I don't want to go the full depth obviously, because it will risk chipping out. So I'm just going to go from the edge here. And basically you just keep chopping out until you get close to your line, but don't go all the way there yet. Okay, so now it's time to actually route out this area. You can see I've chopped out quite a bit of waste, but I've left quite a thick chunk left, and you can see it's quite rough. So I've set out my trimmer again with the MDF and the clamps and everything like I did last time, and just going to start routing away again. Again, ear protection, and off we go. So I've got everything set up here again, and this time I'm going to route out the wear here. It's only a thin slice I have to take. Depending on the thickness of your bit that you use in your router, you might not be able to get all the way down into here, because obviously you'll start cutting into the bed otherwise. So maybe I'll only go halfway and then kind of clean up the rest with a chisel. So you can see I've here routed out this little the wear here, and I've kind of cleaned it up with a chisel. And now the last thing you need to do to kind of shape this mouth area is to kind of open up this wear piece here. So right now, I don't know if you can see very well, but this sliver here is at the same level as this piece, so everything's all level. But because the blade is going to protrude down here, you need to open this up that way, so it kind of slopes and gives clearance for the blade. So I was taking a small chisel here, and from this point, this kind of corner here, from there I'm just going to pare straight kind of down to the full width of the mouth here, from this height. So just a straight line down, and that will give us some clearance. so sort of take it easy. You don't want to be too aggressive here, because this is also going to be your mouth, so if you take too much out here, your mouth could become a bit too wide, so kind of be careful and just take little bites. So to give you a close-up here, this is the kind of piece I cut out, and this extends, this kind of wedge here extends from this surface here, the height of this surface, down to nothing at the corner of the mouth. So it's just a slope going gradually down, and that provides clearance for the chips or the shavings, because if you place your blade in the mouth here, you can see that, well, obviously, since your blade is going to extend all the way into this corner, roughly, it's going to make a cut down there. And if it makes a cut, then obviously there's shavings going to come out, and if you didn't cut this away here, then it would jam the shavings because there's nowhere for the shavings to go. When we make the wedge, we'll also be cutting a similar sort of slope into the wedge so that the wedge doesn't obstruct the shavings either. We'll be cutting a kind of, maybe not as far down as this, but you need to make these prongs on the wedge fit into here so it bears on this surface here, because this will eventually press against this area of the blade, and you want pressure right at the tips of your blade if you can. That basically holds down your blade flat to the bed, and that reduces chatter. So that's one sort of critical area, or one area of your plane which will determine its performance. So make sure you clear this out nicely, and also clear out this wear face and make that smooth, because that will let shavings flow past smoothly. So I almost forgot, but before we glue these two halves together, we want to chop out or kind of slope this throat area here, this patch. This is kind of to let you get your fingers in a bit more easier. It gives a bit more clearance. So if you remember, we drew a diagonal line from this corner here down to the front of this mouth piece here, kind of going down there. And we want to pair basically a kind of triangular wedge-shaped piece of wood from here. So basically, just take a chisel and go with it. This is all mainly kind of cosmetic, I guess, or it's not really very critical, so if you screw up here, you won't lose too much, just kind of clean it up. Basically you just keep chopping slowly. And slowly pare away. It's a bit of an awkward position for me because I gotta show this on the camera, but you just keep paring away this kind of triangular wedge, and keep in mind that you won't be able to get this flat because due to the geometry of things down here, you can't get this perfectly flat, so you might get a slight curve as it comes down here or so. But basically the thing to keep in mind is to make this here, this patch here, kind of dip down this way a bit, but keep this abutment line here full height. So don't touch this edge at all here, along here, because that's where your wedge will go, so you want a kind of maximum bearing surface on there.